The first time I heard his voice in my house, I was in the kitchen, barefoot, microwaving soup. It was deep. Too deep. Confident. Too confident. "I'll see you Monday, Becca," he said, chuckling through the phone's tiny speaker. "And don't forget what you promised." Then a click. Call ended. She didn't know I heard it. She stood there for a second in the hallway, holding her phone like it was a grenade she forgot how to throw. I said nothing, just stirred my soup. She turned, smiled like nothing was off, and asked if I wanted to watch something together. I nodded, but I didn't sit with her. I sat across from her, studying her like a stranger. That was the moment everything snapped into focus. The late-night client dinners. The new clothes with tags I never saw receipts for. The sudden perfume she wore that I'd never smelled before. And now his voice, in my home. Casual, relaxed, intimate. I didn't ask questions. I made a plan. The next day, while she was out getting drinks with the team, I used the one thing I never thought I would, her work iPad. She left it open on the kitchen counter. No lock. No hesitation. Almost like she wanted me to see. Inside her work folder was a calendar invite from the week before. It read, "Private Strategy Sync, Off-Site. Attendees, Becca, required. Carter, required. Location, Hotel Mercer, room 719. My stomach dropped. That wasn't a meeting. That was a message. A breadcrumb. A clue left out like some kind of cruel joke. Still, I said nothing. I cooked dinner, washed the dishes, kissed her on the forehead like always. But that night, I stayed up. Quietly, in the office. I started downloading everything. Backups, email attachments, meeting notes, even the hotel's online booking records. I wasn't looking for proof anymore. I was building a case. And not just against her. Against him. Because if he thought sleeping with someone's wife was just another startup perk, he had no idea what kind of man I really was. I didn't sleep that night. Not even close. I just sat at my desk, lit by the soft glow of my second monitor, watching her text notifications pop in one after another. They were muted, but I'd mirrored her phone months ago. It was an old paranoia I had when she used to travel so much, a just in case I'd long forgotten about. Until now. Carter wasn't messaging her like a man with guilt. He wasn't secretive, wasn't cautious. No, he was bold, shameless. Every message was a thread he didn't bother to hide. I saw one where he said, "You looked incredible in that green dress today." I couldn't stop thinking about unzipping it. And she replied with a simple heart emoji. I think my jaw locked in that moment. I wasn't angry, not yet. Anger would have been a relief. What I felt was worse. I felt humiliated. Small. Like I'd been quietly replaced in my own life and hadn't noticed until it was already done. And it wasn't just the cheating that got me. It was the way she compartmentalized it. She still kissed me goodnight. Still asked about my day. Still laughed at the shows we watched together like nothing was burning behind the scenes. But now I saw it. I saw it everywhere. The way she angled her phone away from me. The way she'd suddenly need to run errands on Sundays. The fake fights she'd start just to storm out of the house for an hour or two. It was all a script. A routine. Something they'd likely joked about over hotel breakfasts. But I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. She'd only lie. And he'd only gaslight. That's what men like Carter do. They're too rich, too smooth, too insulated by power to believe consequences are real. I knew I had to be smarter than both of them. And I had one advantage. They thought I was weak. They thought I was too soft, too ordinary, too slow to notice. They were wrong. The next day, while she was at work, I made a call to a friend of mine, Bryce. He used to work in IT security at a law firm before he quit to freelance full-time. Quiet guy. Tech genius. Owed me a favor. I told him I needed to retrieve deleted messages from a device that wasn't mine. He didn't ask questions, just asked for a few details, and said he'd get back to me in 2 days. That night, I took Becca out to dinner. Yes, dinner. Candlelit. Fancy. The kind we hadn't done in over a year. She wore that same green dress. The one Carter mentioned. And as she smiled at the waiter, I stared at her wondering how long she'd been able to separate who she was with me from who she was with him. Was it weeks? Months? Could she even tell the difference anymore? We talked like nothing was wrong. She complimented the food. Told me I should take more breaks from work. Reached across the table to squeeze my hand. And I let her. Because I wasn't done yet. The plan wasn't just to catch them. It was to dismantle their illusion. To remind them that not all betrayal comes with a warning shot. What I was about to do next would change everything. By the time Bryce got back to me, I had already memorized their patterns. Tuesdays were when they'd meet off-site, her word, not mine, for what she claimed were creative brainstorming sessions. She'd come home smelling like hotel soap, always full of ideas and too tired to talk about them. Saturdays were riskier, but more revealing. Once a month, Becca would say she was going to volunteer with her team. She even had a charity flyer she reused, just in case I asked. But the logo on that flyer belonged to an organization that hadn't existed since 2019. I checked. Twice. Bryce came through with everything: texts, DMs, even audio snippets from voicemail files Becca had deleted weeks ago. He dropped it all into a secure folder and messaged me one sentence: "Whatever this is, be careful." I stayed up that night listening to my wife laugh. Not in person, in recordings. There was one that broke something in me. Carter had called her from what sounded like a hotel room. He said her name like a whisper, told her he missed the way she tasted. And she giggled like a teenager. She said she missed him too, and that Liam's still completely clueless. I wasn't clueless. I was quiet. There's a difference. You see, I realized something in that moment. She didn't just cheat. She made me the punchline. I was the background noise. The harmless, clueless husband who folded laundry and cooked dinner while she played out her second life behind tinted hotel windows. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. But I didn't. Instead, I wrote a list. Not of what I felt, of what I knew. The dates and times of their meetings. The messages she sent from our bedroom while I slept 6 feet away. The financial trail, subtle but traceable, of hotel charges under her company card. The fake charity excuse. A copy of Carter's NDA that I found on a shared Google Drive. The NDA was key. It wasn't a standard document. It had language about professional boundaries, media discretion, and even a clause about unauthorized relationships that could result in termination. It was his signature, his rules, and he had broken every single one of them. I printed it all, compiled it into a single, clean file. Nothing aggressive, nothing emotional, just facts, evidence. And then I did something unexpected. I booked an appointment with Carter. Not a phone call, not an ambush, a formal meeting. Under the guise of a freelance branding pitch, I used a fake company name, threw together a LinkedIn page, and scheduled it through his assistant. She confirmed within 3 hours. Carter loved to meet creatives, apparently. Becca had no idea. That morning, she left in a hurry, like always, probably texting him on the way. She kissed my cheek like she meant it, like I hadn't been up until 3 a.m. printing evidence of her betrayal. I put on a clean shirt, packed the folder into a leather bag I hadn't used in years, and drove to his office. It was time to stop being the punchline and let the man who thought he owned my wife learn exactly who he'd been messing with. The building was too modern. Glass everywhere. Not the kind that invites you in, but the kind that watches you. I checked in with the receptionist under the fake business name I'd created, Grangeshift Studios, which sounded just techie and vague enough to be real. She smiled, offered me water, and led me to a waiting area with furniture that looked like it cost more than my car. 10 minutes passed, then 15, and then I saw him. Carter. He walked toward me like he owned the floor beneath him. Black shirt, sleeves rolled up, gold watch catching the light. He had that swagger, the kind of confidence born from money, gym hours, and too many people saying yes to him for too many years. He looked me in the eye and smiled with those teeth that made women forgive him and men hate him. "Liam, right?" he said, offering his hand. I shook it. "Thanks for making the time," I replied, calm, steady. "I know you're busy." "Always," he chuckled. "But I'm curious. Your proposal sounded interesting." He led me into a conference room that smelled like air conditioning and citrus. Soundproof. Sleek. Private. He sat across from me, leaned back like he had all the time in the world, and said, "So, tell me what you've got." I slid the leather folder across the table. He looked at it, but didn't open it right away. Instead, he tilted his head. "You're not what I expected." "Oh," I said, raising an eyebrow. "I figured someone pitching creative strategy would look a little more." He paused. "I don't know. Silicon Valley." I smiled just a little, and I figured someone with a policy against internal affairs wouldn't sleep with his employee in a hotel 3 blocks from his own office. He blinked, just once, but I saw it. His fingers twitched against the table, like he was deciding whether to reach for the folder or punch me in the face. "I know who you are, Carter," I said, my voice dropping. "I know about the texts, The calls. The Thursday night bookings under private meetings. I know about the NDA you wrote and broke. I know everything. For the first time, he looked nervous. But only for a second. Then he laughed. Softly at first. Like I'd just told a clever joke. He leaned forward and pushed the folder back toward me. Look, man, he said, and now his voice was lower, colder. Whatever drama you've got going on with Becca, leave me out of it. You're in it, I said, neck deep. And what exactly do you want, he asked. Money? An apology? You want me to fire her? Or are you just here to play some sad little power game? I stood up slowly. I want you to remember this moment, I said, because it's the last time you'll think you're untouchable. He smirked. Arrogance returning. What are you going to do? Post screenshots online? Go to her HR department with a sob story? Good luck. She won't back you. They never do. I didn't respond. I just pulled out my phone, pressed play, and let him hear his own voice, whispering things no boss should ever say. I left the folder on the table and walked out without another word. Not because I didn't have more to say, but because I already knew what was coming next. And Carter didn't. The thing about men like Carter is they only understand one kind of power, control. Control over image, narrative, people. But what he failed to realize is that control built on arrogance is fragile. It doesn't take much to tip it, just a push in the right spot. I didn't go home right after the meeting. I parked 2 blocks from our house and sat in the car, engine off, the evening air creeping in through a cracked window. I watched the glow of the upstairs bedroom, saw her silhouette pass once, twice. Then the light went out. She'd be asleep soon, peacefully, comfortably. She had no idea that her boss had just listened to his own voice playing through my phone in full stereo, whispering to her like they were untouchable gods in a story without consequences. She had no idea that I'd walked into his lair not as a husband begging for answers, but as a quiet storm with facts, leverage, and something far more dangerous than rage, patience. When I finally walked into the house, everything was exactly as I expected. Dinner was covered in foil on the stove. A note said, "Wasn't sure if you'd eaten. Reheat if you're hungry. Love you." Her handwriting looked practiced. Too perfect. The kind of note you write when you're still pretending. I didn't touch the food. Instead, I sat down at my desk and opened the second phase of the plan. Carter's company, the one Becca worked for, was a startup, but a high-profile one, funded by investors who valued ethics almost as much as innovation. The same investors who, I discovered through public filings, had clauses built into their contracts about personal misconduct, workplace boundaries, and non-disclosure violations. Clauses with teeth. I didn't go public. Not yet. That wasn't the play. Instead, I wrote a series of anonymous tips, each one meticulously worded, attached with encrypted evidence, voice recordings, calendar screenshots, copies of expense reports, even surveillance stills I'd quietly collected from a friend who owed me more than one favor. The tips were scheduled to be released at intervals, staggered, unpredictable, each one a drip, a small crack. Carter would never know where the leak came from, but he'd feel it, and it would grow louder. Still, that wasn't even the best part. The best part was Becca. She had no idea Carter was about to start unraveling. No idea her godlike boss had been knocked off center. I watched her over the next few days. How she texted him with less frequency. How she started looking more distracted at dinner. How she asked me, if I thought she was doing well at work. I told her she was doing great. That she seemed confident lately. That she looked happy. She smiled at that. And in that smile, I saw everything that was about to fall apart. The next morning, I checked her phone. One text, buried in a longer thread, stood out. "Carter, we need to cool it for now. A few things are shifting." Cool it. That was the beginning of the end. He was trying to distance himself, minimize risk, reposition. But Becca wasn't just any employee anymore. She was an attachment, a liability. And Carter? Carter was the kind of man who abandoned liabilities the moment they became inconvenient. She didn't reply right away. Hours passed. Then finally, late that night, she sent him one sentence. What does that even mean? That sentence told me more than 1,000 confessions ever could. She was confused, nervous, and most importantly, not in control anymore. Exactly where I needed her to be. The cracks didn't show up all at once. They started small, delicate. You'd miss them if you weren't paying attention. But I was. Every hour of every day. Becca started sleeping later. not out of rest, but avoidance. She scrolled longer in the mornings, stared blankly at messages she wasn't responding to, and sat with her coffee untouched. She'd always been sharp in the mornings, calendar open, phone in one hand, laptop in the other. But now she looked like someone who was trying to remember who she used to be before she made a deal she couldn't undo. At dinner that week, she said something strange. "I think Carter's going through something," she muttered, not looking up from her plate. "Oh," I asked, trying not to smirk. "Yeah, he's been distracted. Snippy. Avoiding calls." She stabbed at her food. "He's barely replying to anything I sent him." I said nothing, just nodded. I could have told her why. That an anonymous folder with his voice and her calendar logs had mysteriously found its way to 2 of his board members. That his own assistant had started poking around after receiving an encrypted PDF titled Policy Breach, Section 8C. I could have told her that Carter was scrambling behind closed doors, probably trying to plug a leak he couldn't even see. But I didn't, because she wasn't supposed to see it coming. Not yet. The thing about betrayal is that when you're the one doing it, you assume you're the clever one, that you're operating on a level the other person can't reach. And Becca, poor Becca, still believed she was operating in secret, unaware that every step she took was being tracked, mirrored, and anticipated. 2 days later, I pretended to forget my keys. She was in the living room, laptop open, headphones in. Her voice was low but tense. I pushed the door open gently, just enough to hear her say, "So you're really just ending it? Like it meant nothing?" I closed the door again, quietly. Didn't go in. Didn't confront. Just stood on the other side for a minute. Listening. He was ending it. Of course he was. Carter didn't care about her. He cared about control, about image, about status. And when she became a risk, when she stopped being a secret and started being a liability, he did what men like him always do. He cut her loose. I could almost feel the panic spreading through her chest as she tried to stay composed on the call. Tried not to let her voice crack. She probably imagined him apologizing, offering to meet and explain. But instead, he probably hit her with some sterile line like, "I think we both got carried away," or, "I can't jeopardize my company." She didn't come to bed that night. She fell asleep on the couch, still in her work clothes, the blue light from the TV flickering across her face. I stood in the doorway watching her breathe. For a second, I felt something old and familiar. Not pity, not love exactly, but the memory of a time when she used to look at me like I mattered. But that moment passed, because now I was watching a woman live through the consequences of her own decisions. And she wasn't even halfway through the fallout. The next morning, she woke up in a panic. I heard her run up the stairs, rustling drawers, flipping through papers. She called out to me in the kitchen, her voice strained and shaky. "Have you seen my iPad?" I looked up, blinked. "No. Isn't it in your bag?" She froze for a half second too long. "Right? Yeah, maybe." But we both knew it wasn't. I had it. I'd taken it the night before, copied the last few weeks' activity, and returned it while she was in the shower. The delay was just enough to make her wonder if she'd misplaced it. Or worse, if someone had gone through it. The seed of doubt had been planted. And that's the thing about guilt, it doesn't need proof to grow. Just the right silence. By the end of the week, the silence had weight. It followed her from room to room. She tried to fill it, with music, podcasts, fake conversations about work, even pointless small talk about groceries. But I could tell. Every word she said was a decoy, a distraction from the one thing she couldn't say aloud. Carter is gone. And I'm next. On Friday afternoon, I heard her crying through the bathroom door. Not the loud, dramatic sobs of someone looking for comfort. The muffled kind, like she was pressing her face into a towel. Controlled. Desperate. She didn't know I was home. I'd come back early, quietly. I didn't knock. I didn't ask if she was okay. I just stood there, invisible, while she tried to hold her world together behind a locked door. She didn't eat dinner that night. Instead, she paced. She walked the hallway with her phone in her hand, waiting for something, anything, to come through. I saw the light from her screen flicker on and off every few seconds. A message, a call, a notification. Nothing. She was unraveling. And still, I said nothing. Because the best part hadn't happened yet. Saturday morning, her world finally cracked in public. I was in the kitchen when she screamed. Not loud. More like a gasp that got caught in her throat. She dropped her coffee mug, and it shattered across the tile. I rushed in with the perfect performance, shocked, concerned, pretending not to know a thing. What happened? I asked. She just stood there, white as bone, staring at her phone like it had just killed someone. There's an article, she whispered. It's on some blog, a gossip thing, I don't know. It's anonymous, but it's about the company. About Carter. About someone having an affair. I moved closer. Wait, what? What kind of article? She handed me the phone with a trembling hand. The headline was brutal. Anonymous whistleblower alleges inappropriate relationship at tech startup. CEO under scrutiny. No names. No photos. Just enough detail to make the insiders panic. The article referenced internal documents, texts, a recording. It didn't accuse Carter directly, but it painted a clear enough picture for anyone close to the company to put the pieces together. Investors were requesting an internal audit. HR had initiated private interviews. The board was reviewing communication protocol breaches. I read the article slowly, making sure she watched me absorb every word, like it was news to me. Like I was just now learning the truth along with her. You think they know it was you? I asked carefully, as if I was defending her. Her face collapsed. No, I didn't tell anyone anything, I swear. I didn't send anything, Liam, I wouldn't. She stopped herself, realizing the implication in her panic. I just nodded, handed her back the phone, and said, I'm sure it's nothing. These things blow over. But it wouldn't, because that was only the first leak. More were scheduled to hit over the next 2 weeks, each one more specific, more detailed, more undeniable. The walls were closing in, and she didn't know which one would collapse first, her relationship with Carter, her job, or me. And that's when I saw it. That flicker in her eyes. It wasn't just fear. It was realization. She didn't know who to be afraid of. And for the first time in this entire betrayal, she wasn't sure it wasn't me. The following week passed like a storm just off the coast. Heavy skies, no rain yet, but everyone could feel the pressure building. Becca stopped going to the office. She told me she was working remotely while things settled down. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. The signs were all over her face. Sleepless eyes, half-sent messages, long pauses before answering anything. She was waiting for Carter to fix it, to protect her, to tell her this would pass and that no one could trace anything back to her. But Carter was gone. No public statement, no formal resignation, just a quiet internal memo sent out late one night. Effective immediately, Carter Jennings is no longer with the company. No details, no ceremony. She saw it on her work Slack thread the next morning. She didn't speak for hours. And then, like clockwork, the second email arrived. Her name. Subject: Notice of temporary suspension pending internal review. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just sat down on the edge of the bed, holding her phone like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I watched her from the hallway. Her hair was tied up in a loose knot. She wore an old hoodie that used to be mine. She looked like someone whose script had run out of pages. Later that night, she asked me a question I wasn't expecting. Do you still love me? It wasn't soft or tearful. It was blunt. Hollow. I stood there in the doorway, hands in my pockets, and thought about everything. The silence. The betrayal. The way she used to kiss me while texting someone else. The way she smiled at a man who treated her like a toy. And I thought about how easy it would be to say no, to walk out, to burn it all down. But instead, I said this. I don't know who you are right now, but I love the person you used to be. She nodded, eyes wet, but didn't try to deny it. Didn't try to lie. For the first time in months, there was no cover story. No fiction. Just her, sitting in the wreckage she helped create. We didn't separate that day. Or the next. I didn't throw her out, and I didn't leave. But something had shifted. A quiet reset. The difference now was that she finally knew the truth. Not just about Carter, or the company, or the damage done, but about me. That I wasn't blind. That I wasn't weak. That I'd seen it all, and chose not vengeance, but precision. Patience. Dignity. In the weeks that followed, she stayed home more. Cooked again. Stopped hiding her phone. We talked, but not about the past. That was off limits. What happened had already carved itself into the foundation of our lives, and neither of us wanted to pick at the cracks anymore. Then, one morning, she left a note on the kitchen table. I'm going to stay with my sister for a while. I need to figure out who I am without all of this. I'm sorry for everything. You didn't deserve what I did. Thank you for not becoming the monster I was afraid you'd be. I folded the note, put it in the drawer, and exhaled like I hadn't in months. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't some big scene. It was peace. And in a world full of screaming and betrayal, sometimes peace is the best ending you can ask for.